Miguel Angel Lopez will no longer be able to race his arms in the Tour de France. He will no longer be able to make memes to the Movistar team on his social networks. He will no longer be able to get angry about competing in cycling ever again. A few months ago, Superman Lopez could not understand how he had been sanctioned by the UCI for doping, being the cyclist who won the most victories during the season, with 27 wins in prestigious races such as the Vuelta a Bantrab, the Tour of Catamarca International, or the Walmart Joe Martin stage race, and all the while enrolled in the always clean Team Medellin, the team where the tender, fresh-faced doper Oscar Sevilla is still happily pedaling. However, he had not been sanctioned for those tremendously clean victories, but for events that happened a year earlier, specifically in the Giro d'Italia 2022, in which, as part of the Astana team, Superman Lopez left the Corsa Rosa with a spectacular abandonment at Blancazzo, and that on only the fourth day of competition, in Sicily, the land where the legendary doper José Luis Rubiera had already abandoned in the '99 Giro due to heat stroke, or the currently without nationality Alexander Vlasov, also of the Astana team at the time, abandoned in the 2020 Giro after having shone in the competitions of the COVID season. He was also struck by a strange indisposition. The former Russian abandoned at kilometre 80, but Lopez did so even earlier, at kilometre 20, after a bizarre crash with Simon Yates as he passed through Noto, the beautiful late Baroque town. It came as no surprise to many, despite Astana's need to score UCI points, as Lopez had also crashed in ridiculous fashion by failing to control his bike in the opening time trial of the 2020 Giro, the one where Vlasov abandoned. You know, the things that Chris Froome says that time trials are hazardous for, well. But the official explanation given by the Astana team and the doctor Emilio Magni for the Colombian's abandonment in 2022, well, it all came down to a strange hip injury, from which he was limping, one which prevented him from following the strong pace of the peloton, causing overloads in the left thigh. Poor Superman had suffered since the first stage in Budapest, and he couldn't solve the problem on the rest day. Oh, rest days and Blancazzos. But fortunately, today, we know the truth. You see, it was precisely in May 2022 that the Spanish Guardia Civil dismantled a new doping network in the European doping paradise, Operación Puerto. There, the university professor and at the same time doping-loving doctor Marcos Maynar was arrested. This doctor from Extremadura had already been appearing for decades in the investigations of the most high-profile doping cases. His rise to notoriety all started in 2002 in the doping case of Athletic Bilbao soccer player Carlos Gurpegui. That's when Maynar tried to defend the team doctor Sabino Padilla, also a doctor of Miguel Indurain's Banesto, for he was accused of doping Gurpegui with 19-norandrosterone on day one of La Liga, in a match where the young player scored 2 goals against Real Sociedad. Maynar defended and said that Gurpegui had naturally provoked the substance 19-norandrosterone in situations of maximum effort, a ridiculous study that ended up being discarded, and Gurpegui was sentenced to a 2-year ban for doping. In 2004, Maynar suffered his first arrest for a crime against public health when he was involved in Operation Gamma, an investigation into the sale of doping substances in gymnasia. Maynar's house was searched and steroids, growth hormones and anabolic steroids were found, but he was acquitted in the lax and shameful Spanish justice system. He indicated that, being a teacher, he was investigating these substances on the grounds of science. 2 years later, in 2006, he was involved in the doping case of the gangster cyclist Aitor González, winner of the 2002 Vuelta a España, while he was coached by Vicente Belda in the Kelme team. On this occasion, he defended the cyclist against a positive for anabolics in the 2005 Vuelta a España, something we only learned about after he'd won the Tour of Switzerland in 2006. It was all a result of food contamination, employing the Contratrol excuse, and again a rejection of Maynar's arguments. But Gonzalez was sanctioned for 2 years for doping. There was a much darker episode in 2008, when the Portuguese cyclist Bruno Neves of the mythical doping team LAMSS died of a cardiac arrest in the Clásica of Amarante while he was leading the competition. Maynar was the team doctor, and a thorough search soon found blood bags in the cyclists' homes, as well as multiple doping substances. The Spanish doctor was sanctioned for 10 years by the Portuguese Cycling Federation, but still suffered no criminal consequences when Maynar blamed the team manager, also the former Portuguese cyclist Manuel Zeferino. That same year, Maynar was also investigated by several German journalists who discovered that the professor had sent offers from the University of Extremadura to 4 popular international World Tour teams, offers to keep track of the cyclists' biological passports. In other words, Maynar would warn the cyclists when they should stop taking doping substances so that they would not appear in the official UCI controls. Again, Maynar defended himself in the most laughable way, assuring everyone that his objective on this occasion was simply to find cheaters, as if he were another member of WADA in search of Lance Armstrong's Moto Man. Since 2008, he went missing in terms of professional sport. But why has Maynar been arrested in 2022, and what does he have to do with Lopez and other cycling teams? And why is he now risking years in prison for allegedly doping athletes and trafficking in doping substances? The Spanish Guardia Civil has shown how Maynar would be the doctor of a doping network, in which several shady characters would be involved. From the doped cyclist Ángel Vázquez Iglesias to the under-23 category director and former Reynolds cyclist Luis Vicente Otín, to the legendary director of Kelme who almost took the doped Jesus Manzano to the grave, Vicente Belda Vicedo, and his son, Vicente Belda García, personal masseur of Superman Lopez and trusted contact of the Colombian. Because we cannot forget that Miguel Angel Lopez left Colombia being represented by Vicente Belda Vicedo and was part of Astana, directed by the doped Alexander Vinokourov, and whose doctor was Raquel Ortolano, already investigated in Operación Puerto, and who was fundamental for the Colombian Condor to get all the necessary confidence to fly in the World Tour. According to documents and conversations seized from the Spanish Guardia Civil, Vicente Belda Vicedo, the 69-year-old former director of the Kelme team, frequently visits Dr. Marcos Maynar to prescribe menotropin for the 2022 Giro d'Italia, for example. That's a doping substance that increases strength and is generally prescribed for fertility treatments, a substance with which Lopez could have tried to fight for the Maglia Rosa against Jai Hindley or Richard Carapaz. Maynar would have sent the menotropin to Vicente Belda García, a.k.a. Vicentin, the son of Vicente Belda Vicedo. He was, remember, Superman's personal masseur. He would receive the items perhaps a week before the Giro, and then they would be given to the Colombian intravenously 2 days before the start of the competition in Hungary. However, Lopez reacted really badly to the doping medication. 4 vials of menotropin. It caused liquid retention and generated numerous micro-tears in his left leg, just as Vicentin wrote to Maynar in the WhatsApp seized by the Guardia Civil. Now, when the information reaches the UCI, months later, even when Lopez had finished the season with notorious results such as a 3rd place in the Vuelta a Burgos 2023 and especially a 4th place in the overall classification of the Vuelta a España 2022, that's when Astana fired both Superman Lopez and Vicentin from the team. And yet we cycling fans haven't heard a breath until now, 2024. It's rather unfortunate, isn't it? Now, Superman not only faces a lifetime cycling sanction, which could put him on the same level as legendary dopers like Lance Armstrong or Danilo Di Luca, he could also get 4 years in prison in Spain if, when called to testify, he denies his doping. But best of all, we can now report Miguel Angel has won. And although there are numerous pieces of evidence pointing to his possible doping in the Giro d'Italia 2022, the always harsh, always stringent Spanish justice system has cleared him of all charges. And so maybe he can return to compete in the ranks of the always decent Team Medellin, competing again and beating Pogacar and Vingegaard as the cyclist with the most wins in a season. Now, who are you calling dirty doper? Justice has become real. Very real.